the political temperature in Washington just spiked. Reports indicate that more than 70 members of Congress are planning to boycott Donald Trump's upcoming State of the Union address, a move some commentators are calling historic in scale. Supporters frame the boycott as a political protest. Critics argue it undermines institutional norms. Meanwhile, cable news, political influencers, and party leaders are clashing over what this moment really means. Is this a strategic message, a symbolic protest, or a risky political gamble? In tonight's breakdown, we cut through the noise, analyze the reactions across media, and explain why this controversy is dominating the political conversation. The announcement that dozens of lawmakers may skip the State of the Union has quickly become one of the most debated political developments of the week. According to multiple public statements and media discussions, the number of lawmakers considering a boycott has grown steadily, reaching what some observers describe as an unusually high level compared to past congressional protests. While boycotts are not unprecedented in American politics, the scale and messaging around this one have sparked intense reactions across both political parties and media outlets. Supporters of the boycott frame it as a form of political expression. They argue that elected officials sometimes use symbolic gestures to communicate deep disagreements with a president's policies or governing approach. Historically, lawmakers from both parties have used non-attendance, silent protest, or coordinated messaging to signal disapproval during major political addresses. In this context, proponents claim the boycott is meant to highlight concerns about governance, policy direction, and political tone, rather than simply disrupt tradition. Critics, however, view the boycott very differently. Some commentators say that the State of the Union is one of the few remaining moments of institutional unity in American politics. They argue that attending the speech does not necessarily signal agreement, but rather respect for the office and the constitutional process. From this perspective, skipping the event risks reinforcing partisan divisions and could be interpreted by voters as political theater rather than substantive opposition. Media coverage has amplified this divide. Several conservative commentators and political figures have publicly criticized the boycott, framing it as a refusal to engage in democratic norms. Their argument centers on the idea that lawmakers are elected to represent their constituents in all official proceedings, even when they strongly disagree with the administration's agenda. Some voices in the media have also emphasized the optics, suggesting that a boycott could be used politically by opponents to portray dissenting lawmakers as disengaged or overly partisan. On the other side, progressive commentators and advocacy groups have defended the boycott as a legitimate protest. They argue that participation in a formal address could be perceived as normalizing policies they strongly oppose. For them, the boycott is not about disrespecting the institution, but about sending a clear message to constituents and the broader public. This framing presents the boycott as a strategic communication tool rather than a procedural disruption. Another layer of this controversy involves the role of media narratives. Coverage across networks has highlighted how the debate is not just about attendance, but about the broader political story each side wants to tell. Some outlets emphasize unity and tradition, while others focus on protest and accountability. The result is a fragmented media landscape where viewers receive sharply different interpretations of the same political event. Political strategists are also watching closely. For supporters of the administration, the boycott could be used to rally their base by portraying critics as unwilling to engage in dialogue. For opponents, the boycott might energize voters who are frustrated with the current political direction and want to see stronger forms of resistance. In modern politics, symbolism often carries as much weight as policy details, and this moment appears to be no exception. Importantly, not all lawmakers from the same party are taking the same approach. Some have indicated they will attend the speech despite disagreements, emphasizing the importance of institutional presence. Others are choosing alternative events, town halls, or public statements to express their views during the same time period. This internal diversity highlights how even within political coalitions, there's no single unified strategy for responding to high-profile presidential addresses. The broader question now is how this boycott will be remembered. Will it be seen as a bold statement that reshaped political messaging or as a polarizing move that deepened partisan divides? Historically, such gestures are often evaluated not just in the moment but based on their long-term political impact. Analysts will likely measure whether the boycott influenced public opinion, media framing, or future congressional norms. For now, one thing is clear. The controversy surrounding the State of the Union boycott has already become a defining media moment. It reflects the heightened polarization of modern American politics, where even ceremonial events can become arenas for major political battles. As reactions continue to unfold across cable news, social media, and official statements, the debate is no longer just about who attends the speech. It is about what participation itself represents in today's political climate. As the boycott discussion expanded, reactions from television commentators, political analysts, and elected officials began shaping the public narrative even further. Some commentators described the situation as evidence of growing political polarization, while others framed it as a calculated strategic move by lawmakers aiming to draw attention to policy disagreements. The contrasting interpretations reveal how modern political events are often filtered through ideological lenses before reaching the public. Several media figures have argued that skipping a State of the Union address sends a powerful symbolic message. From this perspective, the act of non-attendance becomes a form of political communication that signals dissatisfaction without requiring a lengthy speech or legislative action. Supporters of this approach say that in an era of constant media coverage, symbolic gestures can quickly capture public attention and spark national debate, which in turn pressures political leaders to respond. However, critics warn that such symbolism may carry unintended consequences. They suggest that voters who value institutional traditions could interpret the boycott as a sign of political disengagement rather than principled protest. In highly competitive political environments, even small perception shifts can influence electoral narratives. This is why strategists from both parties are carefully watching how the public reacts, not just how commentators frame the issue. Another key factor is how different lawmakers justify their decisions. Some emphasize respect for the institution of the presidency, even when they oppose specific policies. Others highlight the importance of standing firm on principle and demonstrating that disagreement can take visible forms. This difference in reasoning illustrates a broader philosophical divide in politics. Whether engagement or protest is the more effective path when confronting policies one strongly opposes. The debate has also extended beyond Congress to include broader civic discussions. Advocacy organizations, political activists, and policy experts are weighing in on whether symbolic boycotts are an effective democratic tool. Some argue that they draw attention to important issues that might otherwise be overshadowed by formal speeches and prepared talking points. Others counter that such actions risk reducing complex policy disagreements to headline-driven moments that may oversimplify nuanced debates. Meanwhile, the media ecosystem plays a significant role in shaping public perception. When commentators highlight the boycott as historic, they emphasize scale and political drama. When others downplay it as a routine partisan conflict, they shift focus toward continuity rather than disruption. These framing choices influence how audiences interpret the same set of facts, reinforcing the idea that modern political controversies are often as much about narrative as about policy. There is also the question of precedent. Political historians note that lawmakers have occasionally protested major presidential addresses in the past, though not always at the same scale or with the same level of media amplification. Each instance contributes to evolving norms about how dissent is expressed within democratic institutions. Whether this boycott becomes a lasting precedent or remains an isolated moment will depend on how frequently similar actions occur in future administrations. From a governance perspective, the practical impact of a boycott is limited. The State of the Union address proceeds regardless of attendance levels, and legislative processes continue afterward. Yet the symbolic impact can be significant, particularly when it dominates news cycles and public discussions. Symbolic politics, while sometimes criticized, has long been part of democratic expression, serving as a visible marker of political disagreement. Ultimately, this situation highlights the tension between tradition and protest in contemporary politics. Supporters of attendance emphasize unity, decorum, and institutional continuity. Supporters of the boycott emphasize accountability, messaging, and principled opposition. Both arguments appeal to democratic values, which explains why the debate remains so intense and complex. As the speech approaches, the focus will likely shift from the boycott itself to the broader political messaging surrounding it. Observers will watch not only who attends or skips the event, but also how each side communicates its reasoning to voters. In the end, the political consequences will be determined less by the act of attendance and more by how effectively each narrative resonates with the public. If you want clear, fact-focused breakdowns of major political moments without the noise, subscribe now. We analyze the headlines, explain the context, and keep you informed on what truly matters in today's political landscape.